What's going on, champions? Welcome to another episode of the Perspective Podcast. I am Kwame Osei.
My name is Dylan Elias.
And I'm Izzy Castillo.
And this is where we tune the heart of mentoring. Let's go. Hey, before we start this conversation, make sure you do us a favor and click down below and give us a thumbs up. I know you're going to share. And if you know what, if you forget, I'm going to remind you at the end of this episode. But on that note, hey, welcome to season 3, episode. What episode is this?
Ooh, it's hard to say at this point.
Yeah,
we're
it's
deep.
hard to say.
We're deep into it.
We're deep. We're close to the end, I'm pretty sure. But we got a very special guest, as we always do. My man, my little bro, Chris Osei-Kusi. Chris, what's up, man? How you doing, brother?
What's going on, Kwame? I'm good, my man. Appreciate you having me on.
Hey, it's a blessing just to have you here and to even just expand on your life and your achievements. I'm really excited for the world to hear your story, really and truly. But before we start, let me just give a quick recap of what's happened to you in the since I've known you, last 3 years. I've known you since 2019, right? 2019, you get drafted into the CFL by the Montreal. I was about to say Montreal Argonauts, the Montreal Alouettes.
What?
You get drafted by the Montreal.
You were drafted by
the Montreal Alouettes. In that same time, because of your great performance at the CFL Combine, you get invited to a mini camp with the Cleveland Browns. Unfortunately, not the Baltimore Ravens, but it's all good. AFC North with the Cleveland Browns. You know, you hold it down there, and then unfortunately you get released and you come back to Canada, right? And in 2019, you decide to go back to school to pursue a law degree. Right, to go back to the law school. And unfortunately, you don't go to Queens University. Unfortunate for Queens, but happy for you. You still went into law school at Windsor, you know, and you have a season there. And then the next season, you know what, you want to do the CFL thing. And unfortunately, COVID hits the whole world. And unfortunately, you were robbed of a season in the CFL. And you're focused on your law degree, doing a bunch of great things within the community, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a bit. And now what year are we in, man? It's been a crazy year.
2021, I think.
It's like 2020 never happened.
Kwame, you okay, bro? This guy's like Montreal Argos. You know what year it is? Like,
hey, it's late for me, man. I've been up since 4:44 this morning. So what time is it right now?
This guy's saying he's jet lagged.
Kind of sleep.
Yeah. Kind just takes my energy. But it's 2021. You have a season now with the Montreal Alouettes, and in the middle of the season, you get released or you get traded. You gotta give me the details. I don't know the details on that.
I got you.
But now you're with the Edmonton Eskimos. So within 3 years, you had
Edmonton Elks.
Elks. Ooh, shame on me.
Kwame, come on, man.
We could. I've been programmed to say Eskimos, but
That's racist.
We gotta switch it up. The Edmonton Elks. The Edmonton Elks. You get signed by the Edmonton Elks, and within those 3 years, like, that's a whirlwind of a year. That's a lot of things happening. And I know from when you went to Queens University to play football, you had a dream in your mind, you had a goal in your mind to do certain things, and law school was one of them, right? So I kind of and football, obviously. So I want to know how you maintained your focus when it got cloudy a bit. So much things have happened in terms of and physically. How did you maintain your focus?
Yeah, 100%. And you said so many things. I don't even know where to start. But in regards to like maintaining my focus, I think it was kind of like a culmination of things, right? And we'll go back to 2019 when I'm kind of zeroed in on football, and I knew law school was something I wanted to do. I just didn't know when, right? I didn't necessarily know when I wanted to, but I knew for sure I wanted to pursue it. So 2019, I applied to law school, and I'm kind of I apply within the back of my mind. Like, I don't really like pay much attention to it. I do the best I can. I get the grades as good as I do. I do my LSAT. I get my references. I just put it in, throw my little paper in the hat. You know what I mean? I just throw my hat in the ring. And I kind of stopped thinking about it a little bit because now I'm like focused on like this football aspect in which now I know I've got the combine coming up. I want to get drafted, another lifelong dream of mine, like you said before. And like my focus is like narrowly on that. So when I do the combine and have a relatively good performance and then get invited to Cleveland, then get drafted, it's like all these football dreams are now coming true. And like I'm knocking on the door of becoming a professional athlete. I'm right there. And then I get accepted into law school. So then I hit this fork in the road. It's like, wait a minute, I might have to make a decision here. Like I've tried to like keep this dream on for so long that I don't have to choose. You know what I mean? Like when I want to be a law student or a lawyer, I can do that. When I want to be a footballer, I can do that. I don't have to choose. And for the first time ever, I like hit that fork in the road, like email Windsor Law. I'm like, wait, so is there a way I can like do a little bit online? Like, can I just like come in like November after the season? They're like, no, like you got to choose. Like either you come to law school or you stay and play football and you try to defer it. And I think what made my decision easier was Montreal originally wanted to put me on the practice roster in 2019. And like I told myself before going to camp that if it wasn't active roster, I couldn't turn down law school. Like I wouldn't be able to live with myself. And I think like that's what helped me. So in regards to like maintaining my focus, I think what I do that has helped me like throughout not only my whole life, but from the last 3 years that you mentioned, is that like I set goals for myself, right? And like I have like standards in which like I won't allow myself to fall beneath. So I told myself before even going to camp that if I wasn't active, I was going to law school. And as hard as it was at that time to make that decision, and believe me, doing property law readings while your friends are on TV and doing and having fun and sending you Snapchats of them doing their post-game activities, you definitely don't want to be being waking up and doing an exam the next day, right? But I knew at the time that like I had goals that I wanted to reach. And I think writing those down and like setting those clear goals for myself, it helped me maintain that focus so I could progress in a way that I knew how.
That's huge. And congratulations on not giving into the FOMO. Most people would give into the FOMO, you know, but the biggest thing you said right there that really was eye-opening was that from the jump, even just doing your LSAT was a big thing. Like just putting yourself in the position, just putting yourself in the pool. A lot of people are afraid to take that initial step. Like for instance, there's a person I'm working with that one of my colleagues, and she's been talking ever since I met her about this opportunity, just an opportunity to further her career, like an opportunity that she wants. And that opportunity has come. Like they're looking for people with her credentials for this position. And now she's kind of like, I don't know if I want to do it, guys. I don't know. Like, I don't know. She's getting like scared, you know, but shout out to you for, you know, just putting yourself in the position. That's hard to do. You know, a lot of people talk about it, but not everybody wants to be about it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like you hear all the monikers, right? Like closed mouths don't get fed, or get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And like it's easy to say, of course, right? And I think once you get put in that position, I'm sure all of us, we're all human. We all have those moments where we're like, wait, should we be doing this? Am I ready to do this? But I think what I learned is that there's never really the perfect moment. You know what I mean? Like there's always going to be a better time if you allow yourself to think that, right? If you convince yourself there'll be a better time, there'll always be one. So at some point in time, you just have to jump in the pool with both feet, even though you can't swim. I can't swim, by the way, but you just got to jump in the pool with both feet and hopefully you float, you know what I mean? And that was one of those situations.
Yo, what real quick, one of my buddies, I used to do security out on site, like way back in the day. And my buddy, he's like, I don't know, 42 years old. He had like 6 kids. He was from Uganda, and he was just like big family type mentality. And, you know, they had just kind of purchased a new house, and he was struggling financially. I worked with this guy over the last 6 years. And then, yo, he comes to work and he's like, yo, my wife's pregnant. Like, and I was like, whoa, like, you know what I mean? And I was just like, geez, you got a lot going on, bro. Like, yeah. And then I'm like, I was talking to him. I'm like, I know it was like an accident or whatever. Is this a good time to have a kid? And he looked at me and he's like, Dylan, there's never a good time to have a kid. He's like, when it comes, bro. You just got to roll with it. But just the way you just said, like, yeah, so it's never a good time. Sometimes you just got to be ready for whatever comes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just got to roll with the punches.
Yep, the perfect time does
All
not
right.
exist. The perfect time does not exist. That's facts.
Wow, Dylan's exited the room again. um, well, I want to ask, okay, so I've been looking at your page and it was really hitting me because I started seeing a lot of crossing of the things that I do in my own job I'm an employment counselor.
Okay.
So a lot of my work is facilitating and teaching about like transferable skills and knowledge-based things about like preparing people for employment and those opportunities. One of these things I've been witnessing a lot is that a lot of people are living in uncertainty right now. And a lot of the conversations that are coming up have been around being prepared for the uncertainty and how do you do that. And I saw a lot of cross language around people who've gone through like sports and being an athlete and being able to you're promoting a lot of messages to prepare people to see the transferable skills between both of
Right.
those worlds. I think that's very important. I was really just like inspired to see that language be spoken because this is something that I'm seeing a lot that hasn't been brought to the table, and it is a necessity, basic knowledge I think we all should learn.
Right.
Even just being able to go to a job interview, like how do you be able to talk about your experiences? Some people feel like they don't have enough experience because they weren't getting paid for a job, but they don't look at the skills they've built through transferable soft skills and hard skills that we go through life. And those are skills that we should be mentioning. So with Switch Mentality, what has been like your goal and drive to bring that knowledge about? Like, what is the root of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And to be honest with you, at first I had no idea, right? I just there was just like this inclination. And I think what happened was when I left Montreal in 2019, I just left training camp, right? And anybody who's played football knows training camp is like the toughest 3 weeks to a month of your year. That your days are very regimented. Like you have meetings in the morning. They tell you when to eat. They tell you when to when you have they tell you when to practice, tell you when to work out. They pretty much tell you when to use the bathroom, right? There's not really much time for anything else. So like your days are like very, very strict. So now I'm leaving Montreal, in which I just had like 3 to 4 weeks of training camp. And I get home and this structure that I had was gone, right? I no longer had that structure. I was home. I was still working out, but I could work out at any time I wanted. I wasn't working. I wasn't in school. Like I didn't really have anything to keep Chris Osei-Kusi as being Chris Osei-Kusi, right? It's like I forgot who I was a little bit. And I think what as time started to go on and I was still like kind of struggling with my identity, that's when like it started to dawn on me. I was like, wait a minute. I'm someone who just left the Alouettes, who just had a mini camp with the Cleveland Browns, and I'm going to law school in 2 months, and I feel like I have no idea who I am. How do people feel when they just finish their playing career, whether it's university, high school, professional athlete, whatever it is, and there's just a path of uncertainty, right? And I think that's when it clicked. I was like, wait a minute, let me try to be a voice that maybe exposes people to this kind of information, right? And that way, when the end of their career does come, and there's very few people who get to choose when the career ends, but when the end of the career does end, they've been exposed to the information for so long that now they have some idea as to what it is they want to do. And I think that was kind of the goal when I started this. Let me just put this information out here. I've got a bunch of high school athletes who follow me, a bunch of university athletes, some professional athletes. Let's all come together, make this community that we can kind of help each other out, right? Because I don't have all the answers, right? And there might be some questions that I don't have the answer to that Kwame does. And because we're all a part of this community, it's easy to have this information that's like easily accessible. So I think the big goal was to kind of expose people's information, let them know that we all are human. We all kind of go through this identity change in which you're no longer an athlete, kind of like figuring that out. And you can come out on the other side of the battle, right? And you can be successful on the other side. So I think like that was the main component. And sometimes it takes people seeing it to believe it. And that's kind of what I kept in my head throughout the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really just even like seeing you be able to market that in a way that's it's people can understand, it's tangible.
Right.
Because I find a lot with the program I run, a lot of people are coming from all different walks of life. It can be that they left a sport. Some people have left their career that they've been in for years, and they're trying to find that new identity of like, what does work mean to me, and like how am I able to speak about who I am and what my abilities are without being always to the label of like I was a social worker and that's all I am.
Exactly. To say the one thing that I will add, and it's like I 100% agree with you. And I think what helped is the timing of things, right? Like now we're in a time in which you have athletes coming out all the time in which they're saying like, I'm more than an athlete. Like I don't sit in a gym for 24 hours and put up jumpers. Like once I leave the field or once I leave the court, I go and work on my investments. I go and spend time with my kids. I go and fix my car. I take a walk. Like I do other things. Like I'm a human first, but then I'm also an athlete. And you hear, like you obviously LeBron James is like a prime example, but like that, LeBron James is no longer the exception, right? You look around the league, you have guys like Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, like in all these different sports who recognize that like I'm an athlete, but that is a part of me. It's not who I am, it's a part of me. And I think hearing those messages from like celebrities or like professional athletes at the highest level, it helps cement it just a little bit more.
This is eerily similar to the conversation me and Kwame had yesterday.
I was thinking the same thing.
Like we were just talking about all this, bro. And I guess my question for you is like, because you touched on it, we all go through it, and some people deal with it better than others, and that's why it's important to have, you know, people who have been through it to kind of come back and reach down to the young ones to help them navigate that. And I don't know if we have enough of that, but you seem like someone who you can tell certain people already kind of understand that there's a life after football, you know what I mean? And you seem like someone who's put yourself on that path even before it happened, right? Like you're still playing football, but you still understand these concepts. So like I just want to know, like, why, you know, like when did this start? Like, were you always this way? Is this something new you learn later in life, or were you kind of like born like talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. And I don't necessarily know when it clicked, but I think even going into university itself, like I always told myself that like I wanted to graduate in 4 years, because sometimes what happens with football, like it's difficult to kind of get your whole degree in 4 years. So a lot of guys will do it over 5 years. And then that fifth year, like a lot of guys will take like 2 or 3 courses, do the football season, and then drop out or like do whatever. And like I just, for some reason, I knew going in that if I was gonna do a fifth year and like have that like extra year of eligibility, which I'm essentially like a senior now, I'm the best player I can be. Now I have value, right? Like now I'm someone who coaches want me to play on their team. So, and we know the type of world this is. Like if you have that value and coaches and they can maybe help you get into teachers college or law school or any type of like masters or anything, and they have that capability and they're able to, and you can help their program, they'll do that for you, right? And I'm not necessarily sure when it clicked. Maybe, I don't know, I wasn't great with authority back in high school or even elementary school. So maybe back then there was always something that was in the back of my mind. But I just think that I was grateful to maybe come from an immigrant family, which I see my mom and my dad who can't really afford to depend on other people, right? Because they have like 3 mouths to feed. They have kids, like I have 2 brothers, they have kids that they have to put through or try their best to like put through school and help them with anything when anything like pops up. And I think what I learned from them is that it's difficult to depend on other people, right? You kind of, as much as you can, like try to control what happens in your life. And I think I always like kept that lesson with me, like seeing my parents, like whether it's getting like laid off from a job and like being quick to like flip the switch and like find something else to support the family. So I think maybe that was probably like subconsciously I would see what they were going through and how quickly they were able to kind of flip the switch and redirect. And I've always like kind of kept that in the back of my mind to be able to redirect in case anything pops up that maybe puts a fork in the road or tries to redirect me a direction that I wasn't ready to go in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love to hear the stories of people who like watch their parents kind of like grind and go through it, and then that was motivation for them because right. I mean, that's not everybody, you know, so keep doing it, bro.
Yeah, appreciate it. And that's for sure.
Yeah, honestly, like as you're talking, I'm just like, man, I wish I was thinking like this in my first, second, and third years of university, you know, and how beneficial would have been to me if I had people around me like yourself who saw the bigger picture. You know, for me, it didn't hit me till like I could lie to you and say I set myself up for life after football, which I did, but like I never really took it in like that.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it might have been like just a fluke, honestly, with me. And then after university, I was just like, okay, I got to do this and this and that. So
like it worked out. Yeah.
It worked out. It worked out. Everything happens for a reason. I'm a strong believer in that. But like right now in your position, or even when you were playing in university, were there people in your circle who you felt like, man, like, yo, all you're focused on is football. Like there's life beyond football. Like this moment is not going to last forever. University life, the partying, all this stuff is not going to last forever. And you kind of felt like, yo, I need to help this guy, but they're not listening. Were you ever in that situation? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
100%. You know, especially at Queens, like sometimes it gets the reputation of being a bit of a party school, right? And again, I was also one of those people who needed to be brought in sometimes, because there were times, even myself, where I saw the bigger picture, but at the same time, like I remember it, and one of my good friends, Ejaz or Jaz, he'll tell you a funny story with like the first week of class or first few weeks of class. I like went to class, I didn't even bring a pencil. And I remember I was like asking for a pencil for like the first couple of days of class. And he was like, bro, you didn't bring a pencil? This is day one. So he'll always tell that story, because to him, it's like, it was such like a 180, right? I went from a guy who didn't bring a pencil to my first class, and I ended up in law school. So to him, it always blows his mind. And same with Nelkis, he's another guy that was in engineering, and like being around those people definitely helped me. Like, okay, like I'm redirecting a little bit. Let me see what these guys are doing. All right, let me get back on track. And in that same token, there was definitely friends that I had, and maybe I'll leave them nameless, but there was definitely friends that I had in which sometimes they were missing that bigger picture, right? Like, and it could expand to so many things. Sometimes it was school, sometimes it was missing lifts, sometimes it was like not putting effort into practice. And it was all these things where I felt like obligated in a sense to be like, yo, you got to tighten up, like whether it's with school or whether it's football or whether with like this passion that you say you want to pursue, tighten up and do it, because we're all here for a limited amount of time. You have the time now, you know what I mean? Let's do it. Let's set yourself up for something. And even if it doesn't work out, and what I always say, even if it doesn't work out, if you can look back with no regrets, you have nothing to be ashamed about. And you mentioned Montreal earlier, and like them releasing me, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, but them releasing me in Edmonton, picking me up a few days later. Like when I left Montreal, I had no anger. I wasn't like frustrated. I was like, all right, cool. Like I know that like I showed up every day at 6:45 in the morning. I stayed after practice. I ran routes. Like I did everything right. And sometimes things just don't go in the way that you want them to go. And I was okay with that, right? So when I left Montreal, I wasn't frustrated at all. Like I was okay with it, because I can always look back and be like, I did everything I could, you know what I mean? And sometimes, you know how professional sports go, like sometimes things just don't shake right, as it's not the right situation, whatever it is. And I think me being able to move forward, it's easier for me to move forward because of how I treated the situation. So I think that mindset that I had like in university, I brought to like my adult life now. And so there was so many situations which I was like trying to help guys out, and similarly guys were trying to help me out. And I think that bettered us, because there'd be times where one of my good friends now, he'll mess with me, be like, yo, you were right, bro. Like there was so many times where I should have just went to class. I should have just taken this school just a little bit more seriously, because now I'm still getting my degree, but I'm behind the 8 ball. You know what I mean? Now, instead of me being done at 22, I might be done at 24 or 25, which is okay, right? Like you can be done at 25, but I think the recognition of the fact that maybe he did screw around a little bit too much, that in itself is a lesson, right? That he won't repeat that same mistake. And I think like that was like the biggest thing, like being that person that can kind of help guide people. And if they do mess up or they do make that mistake, I'm still going to be there to support them. But now sometimes people have to go through things themselves, right? It's always better to let other people make that mistake for you, so that you can learn from other people's mistakes, but which will save you a lot of time and money, definitely. But sometimes people have to make their own mistakes. And I'm just, I try to be a conduit to help bring them to that next level.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. Honestly, that's so true. And sometimes it's so hard for us to understand, especially as like people who care, like people, leaders or family. It's hard to let somebody be, and let them go through their lesson. You know what I mean? It's hard, but that's wisdom right there.
Also, the biggest thing not to get overlooked in that whole thing was you were talking about the people, right? The certain group of people were kind of like pulling you into the right direction, and the certain people were, because that's, I mean, we say that every day, five closest people in your circle, right?
Exactly. That's huge, huge. And those guys, like the guys that I mentioned, like Jazz and Elkis, like to this date, like they're two of my closest friends, right? And I think we just had that mutual understanding of, well, of course we like to have fun and like we'll party or whatever, but like big picture, like can we look back 10 years from now and be like, we did everything we did to be satisfied or to be able to live with where we are now, right? I think that constant reminder of us reminding each other, it was only beneficial.
I feel like I haven't got enough of like what led you to law school and like how are you going to use law school towards the things you're doing? Because law school isn't like a small thing. Like that's a pretty, like my brain goes to like advocacy, understanding, making system changes. Like when I look at your page and it's called Switch Mentality and Built Different, I think of like people in those using those terms are people who are wanting to make changes. So with the law path that you're going in, what led you to that? And like, what are you going to be using that in your life and maybe even just in the communities you're in that you've seen that you want to make some systematic changes?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's always funny because anytime someone asks me like, what led you to law school? I never know how to answer. Like, I never know how to answer it. It's weird, but the one thing that I always remember is I remember like I was like maybe like 12 years old, and my mom and a few teachers, they just kept telling me, "You're gonna be a lawyer," and I was like, "No way, I'm not gonna be a lawyer. Are you kidding me? You gotta go."
I feel like every mom says that to every kid who argues.
And I definitely fit the bill. You know, maybe that's what my teachers kept telling me that. So I'm not necessarily sure what led me there, but I think so. Obviously, I remember those moments of like my parents and my teachers, like maybe like planting that seed. And I remember one day in particular where I was actually in Kingston for the summer, like just like training. And I remember like looking up like what lawyers like actually do and like kind of like reading like these forms and like seeing like the life of a lawyer and like exposing myself to that information. And for like one of the first times ever, I felt a similar passion towards what I was reading, the same way I felt for sports. And that's when I was like, whoa, hold on. Like maybe I can bottle this. You know what I mean? Like maybe this can be something that can be a career for me. And the more I read about it, the more lawyers I spoke to, whether it be John Clivey or Brad Elberg, like guys that went to Queens who also played in the CFL, it was like, okay, like this is definitely something I can see myself doing, right? And I think in this life, when you find something that you're passionate about, you have to pursue it, right? And I think if you, especially as a career, if you can find a career in which you can like read stuff and still be excited about it, and regardless of what it is, and sometimes people try to put limits on that. I don't like, whether you're an artist, you're a podcaster, you're a lawyer, you're in the trades, like if you're passionate about something, pursue it, right? And that's always my lesson, and it will be to my friends, to my future kids. Hopefully, I don't have any right now. To my future kids, whatever it is, like that'll always be like my word of advice. And to answer your second question, like how can I help? I think one thing that I really noticed is that a lot of people didn't necessarily think being a lawyer was something that was within their reach. Right. And I grew up in Brampton, Ontario. I knew zero lawyers growing up. And I was the same, right? I didn't think it was within my reach either. And I think when I got into law school, when I started working downtown Toronto, like people looked at it like, wait, I grew up with Chris, right? I grew up with him. We go to dinner. Like if he can do it, why can't I? Like, can you put me on a path so I know that I can also do this? And I think like that has been like the biggest impact, is that people are seeing what I'm doing. I'm putting it out there for people to see, and I'm making myself a resource, right? Like, and I tell people all the time, like, if you have a question, call me. I was just literally talking to someone a few days ago, like, call me, message me, like, I will find time to sit down and talk this through, because similarly with me, it was reading those forums and like getting myself excited about it. And with other people, it's like, wait, if he's doing it, let me talk to him and see what it is. Wait, hold on, this sounds like pretty exciting. let me see if I can also do this too, right? And so right now, like that's been like the biggest impact. And going forward, for sure, like I would love to like continue working with Switch Mentality and like keep providing that exposure, but also like maybe having events in which people can actually like see this stuff, be there, fill the shoes of people who are lawyers, because that's a space that we all know is like, it's a predominantly white space, and not a lot of people who look like me are lawyers, right? We don't have those same connections. So if I could be the person to get into that space and like pull people up and let them see it and again, like being a lawyer isn't for everyone, and that is a-okay. But if I can let people get exposed to that and give them, I guess, allow them the information to at least make that decision, for me, that's a win, right? So I think like that is like the plan going forward, just to keep exposing people to it, allowing people to make that information more accessible, and just kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit.
Yeah. And I think with the whole being able to still be a resource for people in a lot of different ways is so impactful. Being someone that grew up in, like you're saying, you grew up in Brampton, and I know my family has lived there for a period of time, and just being able to, like, even just talking to youth today, like some of these careers are so like they're not obtainable because they haven't seen people like them go forward, or they don't have the access to the information unless someone brings up like, what are you passionate about? What are your interests? Where do you want to go? What does that look like? What are the steps?
Exactly.
Like, and that's like having casual conversations without talking about barriers that they're facing. So
Exactly.
I think even just you being your own medium of a voice to those things and a resource, I think that's very impactful. But yeah, thanks for sharing your how you got there.
I feel like Izzy lived in every guest we have. Wherever they're from.
I literally feel like I'm sitting here. I'm like, do I know Chris? Because I'm like battling people. Like, I feel like you have a familiar face. I may or may not. Who knows?
I love everything you're saying. I don't know if you're meaning to say this or not, but just when you were telling your whole story, like I hope my kids are listening, because this is what I always talk to them about. Is like yo, this guy's, he literally Googled what do lawyers do, and now he's on that path. Like, people think it's so like, but no, that's just how it starts. And what else did you say? You talked about, I talked to people, you know what I mean? I read the forums. Like, it's like you said, I think people sometimes put stuff on a pedestal that it doesn't really need to be that way. It is accessible. I gave Kwame a book, like do you remember that long time ago? I gave you that book about like that guy who wrote the book, but he kept a little notepad of jot notes. It was something about secrets, like all my little anyways, long story short, there was a story in there about like, it's already a long story, is that what you're saying? There was like this Korean golfer, like from South Korea, and up until that point, like no golfers had ever come out of Korea. Like, it wasn't like a very popular sport. And then this one girl just like blew it up, and she went like on, PGA Tour or whatever, and placed pretty well. And the year following that, golf increased, like it was like 25%. And then the year following that, it went up like 37%. And it was just like, because of this one person. And it was just kind of like showing, like, it's just like you said, visibility. As soon as someone sees someone who looks like them doing something, they're like, oh shoot, maybe I can do that too. I know that girl. I know what neighborhood she's from. I know her, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I love that you have like the comprehension to understand what you're doing right now and like the bigger picture, but B, just how you like, you didn't try to make it seem like you were like some kind of big like brainiac, like, oh, I could do this, but not everyone could get it out of the mud like I did. Like, but you're like, no, man, I started Googling it and talking to people, and here I am. Like that's more the message. What people really need to hear is like, yo, you can do this too. It's not like what maybe people think it is. So yeah, I love that, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing I'll add, and I think you hit it, you said it perfectly. I think what also helps is that, like, when I got to law school, there's not much that I changed about myself, right? Like, I still wear my earrings, I still wear my like, I'm still who I was before I got there. I go into the firm, my earrings are in, I wear my hair how I want to. And I think like that helps even more, right? People are looking at me and say, wait, not only did he get into the space, but like he's still him. And I think like, and I had a conversation with this one time with my friend, and funny story, shit, might as well, I'll tell you. But so there was this time where I went, the Black Law Association, there was like a conference. And at this conference, of course, everybody there is a lawyer. And me, like I was like in my suit or whatever, but I was wearing like, I guess I was wearing like a designer belt, like a Louis belt. And like I had like my chain untucked. And one of my friends like messaged me and was like, bro, we can't do this no more. Like we're evolving, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, bro, I do this on purpose. You know what I mean? Like I want people to see that, yo, you could be who you are and bring that to the space and still be accepted. Like that is fine. Like I grew up in Brampton and like he went to a private school, so maybe that's maybe a little bit different, but I didn't go to private school. I went to public school, like through and through everything. Like I know people who have obviously like been in like tough situations, and like I just want to, and I what I strive to, and I hopefully I continue to do is that you can be who you are in spaces that people don't necessarily think suit you or fit you, right? And if 1, 2, 3 people do that, similar to the golf story you said, now people are like, hold on, like, of course, like you have to, of course, like be well kept and still wear a suit. Like you can't like obviously do a national show up in sweatpants or whatever. But at the same time, like if there's stuff that you feel is a part of you and it's something that you like to do and it's a part of your identity, bring that with you. And I always encourage people to do that. So definitely a good point you brought up.
And yeah, just to flip it back to you, like I think the one thing that you just hit on right there was like you were trying to make a statement, but you were making it on your own terms.
Right.
You know what I mean? You weren't trying to go over the top just to like prove a point.
Just to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. You were like, no, this is me, and
I
I can bring that exactly. And I think that's the most important thing, because if you're always like coming from here, if you're always doing it from the heart, then no one can ever say anything. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
No, that's dope. But then there's still gonna be those people, you know, there goes the neighborhood people, but
there's always gonna be those people. Always.
Exactly.
They're fading away though.
But
They're
that's just
gonna
part
like
of
I never thought. I spent 4 years at Queens. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd have a coach at Queens with dreadlocks. There's just no way. There's never in my wildest dreams would I would have thought that. And the year I leave, funny enough, we get one. And right away, obviously, we never even met, but like we're messaging each other on social media. Like we have a similar last name, and I'm like, "Yo, you're at Queens now? Like what? You have the receiver?" I'm like, "Bro, what? Like I just missed you." And like we all know Kwame's obviously doing a great job, and he's a great coach, and he can wear dreads in Kingston and Queens and be himself, and he's okay with that, right? And I don't think that takes away from who he is as a person. Everyone knows that like he's a great coach, a great person, a great leader. All those things I can spend. Call me. I don't have that much time, but I can list a bunch of things, and you know, people know that regardless of like whatever the conception can be. So that was also one of the things that definitely struck a note for sure.
That's facts. Appreciate that, man. I'm gonna get a little serious right now. I know we're talking about all the good and fun things, but I want to get a little deep with you, and I want to because I think we're in a space that we should, because there's people that people that need to hear this and people that can learn from your experiences. I think it was about a year ago. You could correct me if I'm wrong. You lost a friend. You lost a friend due to gun violence. A person that wasn't involved in the streets, nothing like that. Clean guy, positive person, and you lost him due to gun violence. And I want to know first of all, how much of an effect that had on you? Obviously, it had a big time effect on you, but how you were able to move forward and not have a cold heart, not have a hardened heart. I deal with a lot of people who certain things have happened to them in their life or somebody around them, and their hearts just got hard, and they just became numb, and they just decided to go a certain way. They hated the world. You know what I mean? And I want to know how you decided to move forward and continue to do what you're doing and continue to be positive, continue to be warm in the community, warm with everybody you embrace, continue to be the positive light. How do you continue to do that?
Yeah, man, like that was like a tough period for me, because that was like the first time I ever had to deal with death, like to someone that close to me. Like that was someone I've known since grade 5, really, like one of my best friends. So like to get that call, like I couldn't believe it until like I like saw it on the news itself, and like that was like, I don't know, it was a very tough period. But I remember like calling like his parents, and like I can't even imagine. Like I lost one of my best friends, but to lose like a child, like it was obviously a completely different feeling. So first, my mindset was like, let me do everything I can to make sure they're okay. Like I can try my, like I have my support system here, but they might not know how to do certain things. I don't want that burden to be overemphasized because maybe there's a language barrier or they don't know how to get help from the place they need to. So let me, with my friends, let me go and like do as much as we can to ease their burden. And I think going through that whole process, like it was like obviously very difficult, but and I would be lying if I told you there was never a time in which I was like, yo, like let me call some people I know and like let's go like get some retaliation, right? Like of course, like it's almost like human instinct, like, oh, we heard like this guy might have did it, like let's go and like let's go see if he did it, and whatever happens, like we'll live with whatever. And going through like those wave of emotions sometimes where like you're sad, then you're angry, then you're upset, and then you're frustrated, and then you're crying. Like it's a crazy experience for me. And again, like the first time I ever really like went through something like that. And I think what helped me, and still like to this day, like I still think about him because like, especially like during football season, like he was like always like on my line, fantasy football, like that was like his thing, you know what I mean? Like that was like his, like it was crazy. But I think what helped me kind of like still become or still like be the person that I am and still try to move the needle and still try to help people in that community, I think it was like a culmination of things. Like one, as mad as I was at the time, like nothing will change what happened. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing I can do or anyone can say really that can change what happened. And also I know that like my friends, we've worked so hard to like get to a point in which like my friend Michael Birchie is what I call him, in which Birchie, like he was along for this ride, right? So he would almost be like so upset with us if we squandered all that for something that couldn't be changed, right? And you know the old saying, like an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Like nothing in this world could like change what happened, regardless of what we did. And I think that kind of helped me. That kind of helped me realize that, like, yo, like he's gone with me physically, but I know like in spirit, emotionally, like he's always with me. Like talking with my boys, like we'll bring him up. Like literally just a few days ago, my friend who Sam plays for the Argos, like he got like one of his like first games in which he like got to like dress, and his caption was like "Long live Michael Birchie." You know what I mean? Like so, finding different ways to like keep him alive, I think has been like huge because obviously like, he is gone, but like now like me and his like ex-girlfriend, I guess at the time, we're like closer than we've ever been, and I think us talking and like building that relationship, that's another reminder of like Michael, right? Me and some of his friends who maybe didn't talk as much before, we all like spent this time helping putting the funeral together, like speaking with people, like doing all this stuff. And now like we've created a relationship that is because of him. So there's always like so many different options and so many different routes you can take that will obviously have an impact on you. And I think like I just chose, and it wasn't definitely not, and it wasn't easy for me to get to that decision, but I just chose like, look, like nothing I can do right now will change the fact that like my boy is gone. So like, what can I do to make sure that one, like we still remember him and we can still like live through him and build relationships that his name is still involved in and he's still remembered. But will I, like, let's say I went and did something stupid and I'm like sitting in a cell, he would be just as upset with me as everybody else, right? And I think that's what kept ringing in my mind, like what would Birchie think of this if I went and did this, right? And I think sometimes people, which is easier said than done, but sometimes people act before they think when you should always, to the best of your ability, like think before you act, right? And I think for me, like I had to take that step back with my boys, and they were just as mad as I was because, like you said, like he's not a guy that was in the streets like that, right? So for something like that to happen, and us like hearing different things, yo, it might have been this person, might have been this person. It's easy for us to be like, yo, like let's go run up and like let's see what happens. But we almost had that support system within each other, like, yo, let's take a step back. Let's think about this. Like, let this play out first before we try and do something that can regret us for the rest of our life.
That's crazy. That's crazy. But it's like as you're talking, I was thinking about like the first things I heard when that happened. Everybody was saying the same thing. He's not like that. He's not a street dude. He's a good guy. And it sucks when bad things happen to good people. But I'm just glad that you've realized that fulfilling your destiny and continue to do what you've been doing is going to make him happy. And
Right.
finding healing in having conversations with his ex-girlfriend and your friends, you know, like that's healing right there. That's a positive way to deal with the situation and what happened. So just understand that like your relationship has changed. It's changed,
Right.
but it's evolved in a different way too, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, I'm proud of you for recognizing that.
Sorry, I'm just taking a moment that I was taking in the story. But sometimes on a podcast, it's hard because I like really listen to what is happening, and I don't like to take a quick jump into the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you were sharing that, I was processing in my mind a little bit about how grief in a lot of different ways. We've had a lot of guests during this season actually share a lot about grief, and like each one of us have dealt with grief even within the last year or two in different ways. And I think I've also thought in my mind a lot of different processing of like what that looks like. And I find that you mentioned you've had supports, and I know that we've worked with a lot of youth that have dealt with a lot of grieving and still in the healing process and trying to reach out to see what communities who they have. Like it can be a day-to-day thing, and if they don't have anyone it can be difficult. So actually one of my questions I was going to ask was going to be around like a little around expanding oneself beyond what is put on them. And sometimes in grieving situations, we often get told to just move forward, like get up and go. And like, you know, like different people who you're around might drive you differently, depending on where they're at in the stages of grief. So I think you brought up a really good point around just that mindset of being able to honor your friend is still in a way um, that is still propelling everyone forward in a way with grace of taking the time with that, but
Right.
not ending up in a situation that's gonna you know marginalize people more, being in jail
Affect the
and
rest of your life. Exactly.
like affect everything around your community, your people. That's lifelong. So
Yeah,
um
and I think,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
I was just gonna add, like, you talked about like grief and how everybody like deals with it differently, and I think, and Tommy, we talked about it earlier about like sometimes you have to go through things yourself, right, to like really understand. And I think for me, like before that happened, like there's no way I could have understood like the grieving process. Like there's no way I would have been able to put myself in someone else's shoes. And they always talk about like the standpoint theory, which is essentially like you don't necessarily understand something unless you're in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
And that for especially for the grieving process for me, like that couldn't have been more true. And I remember like when it happened, there was like this like outpouring of like support from like a bunch of my friends. And like as small as it was to them possibly to like send that message, to me it was huge, right? Because I know that like this thing happened to me, but I've got 100, 200 people who literally messaged me to show me how much they care about me. And it got to a point really, and the reason I bring up that sometimes you have to go through things to really understand, like it got to a point where I was like messaging people who had lost people in the past to be like, yo, I should have been there for you, bro.
Mhm.
Like I'm like I
Mm.
apologize, bro. Like I should have like there's no like I should have done more, bro. And like now that I'm going through this and I know like how much a message means, bro. Like I've learned from that experience, and I think that's one of those things that like you sometimes you got to go through it. So yeah, of course it looks different for everyone, but sometimes what I always try to remember is like sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, right? And going through that experience and like living it, it opens your eyes dramatically, and now all of a sudden you're a completely different person. And when you can like implement that change into you as a person, that's when growth happens, right? And that's always a positive.
Yeah, just being
Facts.
comfortable to reach out to
Mm.
people. I think people get so uncomfortable to be like, oh, I don't know them. And like, I don't know how to reach out. I don't know if I should say anything. But we're all meant for connection, and we're all here
Right.
living in such a crazy world of 2 years of like isolation. So I think it's very important for people to just reach out. Like, even if it's like sending you love, like some of those messages need to be heard on all angles. Because like you said, like unless if you go it yourself, you don't realize the impact of those words.
Exactly.
And I know we've talked about this in episodes, just like how far that goes for people. So I'm sorry to hear about your friend. I just met you today, but I'm
Yeah,
just,
no, I appreciate that.
it's hard. It's a very life-changing thing for people, like even just one person,
Right.
to face that. But yeah, I think that's even a good advice for anyone listening too. Just if they're feeling that and not knowing where to go, just know that there people have experienced this too, and that you're not alone in it.
Yeah, it was actually you brought up a point. I'm sorry to hear about your friend.
Thank
I
you.
I also lost someone close to me, my brother, this past year, and it was funny because when you were saying that about the messages, I was just thinking back to like there were so many people who messaged me, and honestly, like I didn't even really always have the energy to respond to them, but the message actually like made me feel good. Even if I couldn't even say anything, like just know it, just seeing their name pop up with like, hey, thinking of you. And I never actually said this, but like the day when it happened, like Kwame called me like right away. I don't know, it was probably like 2 hours or something after I found out, but I couldn't answer his call. I seen the number pop up and I just couldn't answer it. But like it meant so much that he was like calling me, like just having that number like pop up on my phone. Like I just knew he was like kind of there with me. So
It's there for you.
yeah, I don't think I ever told you that. Thanks, bro.
Got you.
But yeah, man. I guess I'll just extend like, well, you have my number, bro. Like if you ever like you said, no one can really like understand it unless you like been
Right.
through it. Because working in the field I work in, I had to deal with this a lot with other people, and you I have to do what I can in the moment, but until like it happens to you on that level, like I think we all knew people who passed on, but till it's someone that close to you, it's just like it's different. And going through that myself now, being able, and like I say, going through that because I'm still going through it, because the thing that we see is like when it first happens, there's a million people there for you, but it's the 1 year, it's the 2 year. That's when you start feeling it on a different level, and I don't think people really understand that. And like 2 years later is sometimes when it really starts to hit you in a different way. And again, like having supports there isn't always like, people don't always get it, like, oh, that was like a long time ago, like what, you know what I mean, like. But anyway, so yeah, I'll just say you got my number, bro, and if you ever need to like chat or even just get some, like, we have one of my boys on who kind of Dorico, he kind of helped me like deal with, because he does that as he's like trained in that.
Okay.
So he kind of helped me get through some things that I didn't even know like I was dealing with, so I could even pass that contact on to you. But yeah, anyways, appreciate you sharing, bro. It's kind of open up your life like that to a couple people you never met. Like.
Yeah, no, it's I appreciate, and I just want to say like to you as well. Like I'm sorry to hear about your brother, and like similarly with you, like I'm a resource too, and I think it's important to have these conversations. I don't really talk about this much, especially not on like a public forum, but I think I think
Sorry.
it's important.
But it's real though. Like this is we're talking about mentoring. We're talking about like this is life. Like this is exactly the things that we live in isolation about. And then there's like lives lost, and then there's people suffering. So like if anything, we talk about, this is the heart of mentoring. It's the heart. Like this is literally your heart is what drives this whole thing.
Right.
So if you don't get deep and vulnerable about those things, then that's like a door closed for a lot of opportunities. Like I know people are going to hear this and like it's going to hit somebody, and that's more than enough. So
Exactly.
yeah, thanks for sharing your story about it, and your friend who's going to live on through even whoever hears this. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
So Chris, part of the show, at the end of the show, we always ask a couple of questions. Well, today we're just gonna ask one question. As you know, this show is called Perspective on Mentoring. It's all about mentoring. It's all about building the youth. And a question we like to ask is, if you can go back to a time in your youth when you were going through a rough patch, a time when you're struggling, you didn't know how you're going to get through it, you know, whether it be school, football, life, I don't know, but you were in your lowest of your lows. And you could be the mentor or the adult in your life. What words would you say to yourself to build yourself back up, to get yourself back up on your feet? What words would you have said to that Chris Osei-Kusi at that time?
Shit, man, that's a. I mean, that's a good question. And like, I think to like so many different phases of my life, like it was the elementary school kid who's always getting in trouble, who I guess needed some
I heard
guidance.
about
It
that
was,
kid, by the way.
yeah.
I heard about that kid. Felix told me about that kid.
Or the high school kid or the university kid, or who I am now. And like, there's so many different, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of things I would say, but I think one thing that could be like beneficial to like the present moment right now that kind of like sums up everything that we talked about is that social media can either be a tool or it can be a toy. And what I mean by that,
bro, say that again real quick. Say that again real quick before you move on. Say that. Hey.
I said, social media, it can either be a tool or it can be a toy. And like that decision right there is like, it's huge because if we talked about so many things, right? We talked about networking, Googling things. Like that is social media, right? You've got your phone in your hand, you can check your screen time. I'm sure you use it for 5 to 8 hours a day at least. So like, what are you doing in that 5 to 8 hours? Like, can you spend 30 minutes like Googling, what does a lawyer do? What does a tradesman do? What does a teacher do? Like all these things that we feel like is hidden information, how to invest in stocks, like it's out there, right? Like YouTube University is one of the best universities that we have in this world. Like it's out there. We have LinkedIn now, like reach out to people that, and you would be surprised the amount of people I've reached out to on LinkedIn that I've had no idea. I've had amazing conversations with people just because I haven't been afraid to reach out to people. You know what I mean? So with that being said, you have like the networking, you have the connection, the way to like talk with people, the community, right? You see what Switch Mentality is doing now, like the community that you can build by just like messaging people and like getting that information and building that connection online. Like, you know, now we're in a time where you don't need to fly out to New York or Boston to sit down and meet with someone to ask them what, like, for example, a sports entertainment lawyer does. I think if sports entertainment is interesting, sports entertainment, the legal industry is interesting to me, I can literally go on LinkedIn, search up someone that's in that industry, shoot them a message, have a 25-minute conversation, and boom, now I have more information. We just had Clubhouse, which I don't use much anymore, but Clubhouse is one of those apps in which I would just go into random rooms and just listen, right? And now it's like you have a decision, right? We have like all the information at our fingertips. And what I would tell to my younger self is like, yo, when you are in a scenario, when you have all that information at your fingertips, just don't squander it, right? Like of course, you're whatever age you are, like you're gonna make mistakes, right? You're gonna want to have fun. You're gonna want to do all those things, which I'm not against. Like eventually, you're gonna have to go to Ale. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to.
Ale's a bar, by the way.
Ale's a bar in Kingston. You're gonna have to do those things, but while you're also on your phone, take some time. Maybe download a podcast, maybe read something on YouTube, listen to something on YouTube, read something online, and use that information to propel yourself forward. Because again, when we have all this information right now, that's like just a click away, seconds away, take advantage of it, right? And that's what I would tell to my younger self, like take advantage of the information, use that to put yourself in situations that you otherwise wouldn't be in, to get information that you otherwise wouldn't get, and use that to form Chris Osei-Kusi. And if you can look back and be happy with who you formed, with the information you've had, then that's always a success.
Great answer. Great answer.
Always.
Everything on like I'm taking a course right now, and literally this has been the theme of like how do people like optimize like on opportunities, like
Right.
why are we like this lady was sharing how she was in a bathroom and she saw this very like top professor that like was brushing their teeth in the bathroom, and she was like, I really need to like talk to them. Yeah, it was kind of like, it's weird, but I took the opportunity, and she ended up getting like the sick job out of it, like in this huge department. But she was really talking about how we should be having more conversations about like the planned absence. It's all about like the unplanned situations that if you just took upon the opportunity to do it out of your not being comfortable with it, a lot comes out of that. So just not being and like capitalizing on like where do you spend your energy? Like how are you optimizing yourself? But yeah, that's a really good advice, and we're all on
sometimes
social media, so.
and sometimes like the last thing I'll say is like sometimes people attribute things to like luck. You know what I mean? Like this person was lucky. They were just lucky. They got to do that. They were lucky. But what I've noticed is that the more prepared you are for opportunities that arise, the luckier you seem to get. You know what I mean? And I think like that's so important to kind of emphasize, because it's like those opportunities, you never know when they come. But when they do come, that window of opportunity, it can be this big, it can be this big, it can be this big, right? Like it can be literally the size of a window. But if you can seize the opportunity because you're prepared, then you're lucky, right? So always be prepared for those situations, and because you never know, like similar to your friend who sees the professor brushing their teeth in a bathroom, which is a completely different conversation, maybe a different podcast in itself. But
yeah,
I think at that
that was probably the most like outrageous approach, but but it happens sometimes.
And it worked.
Yeah, it works.
You gotta be good to be lucky. You gotta be lucky to be good.
Exactly.
Hey, Chris, man, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for working around our schedule and your schedule and figuring out the time to finally do this. But thank you for coming on, man. Like so much to unpack from this conversation. Thank you for sharing your grieving process and just opening that part of your life to us. Really appreciate that, and I know that there's going to be people that are watching that whose hearts that's going to touch. And thank you for just teaching us to jump in the pool, take a chance, with the LSAT and everything, and also being wise enough to place yourself in the right environment during your growth period, and not allowing yourself to be put in the box, truly being more than just an athlete, being a human first, because there's a whole generation of kids who will not believe till they see, right? There's a whole generation of kids who will not believe till they see, who will not believe that a person that looks like them can be what you are today.
Right.
And you're more than just that. But I'm gonna finish off on this note to echo what Chris said. Social media can be a tool and a toy. What are you using it for? Chris, thank you so much. On that note, Dylan, hit him with the outro.
All right, sorry, I'm just feeling.
I just want to say, last thing I'll say is that I always, like, to anybody that's watching this who I guess maybe feels the need and they want to reach out to me, like I'm very accessible. Like I'll get back to you. I don't know when, but no, I'm playing. I'll definitely get back to you. And like, especially like I'm you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever. And like, you want to know what a lawyer does, which I'm still really don't know, but I can tell you what I do know, or like the life of a football player, or whatever, literally anything. Like I've got a lot of friends that I can connect to it too. So like anybody that's watching this, and obviously this is like a podcast on mentorship. So take advantage of it, right? And use social media as a tool and like shoot me a message, and don't be afraid. Like I'm a person that will be willing to have that conversation with you. So just putting that out there if anyone does feel the need to reach out.
Appreciate that. Yes, sir. And before Dylan tries to brag about his Oakland Raiders or whatever team they're called now, hey, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let's go.
You started it, bro. You brought up the Ravens early. I just seen them. I was like, all right, let's go ahead. Oh shoot, it's been a couple weeks. This is my favorite part, Chris, because I always can't remember the outro, but for some reason they let me do it every single time. And I don't think I did it right.
I think it's become part of the show that you don't know it.
But you don't forget it. It's only right.
All right. Well, we appreciate having you, Chris, and to everyone else, hey, that's just our perspective on mentoring. What's yours? See you next week. Is that it? I think something was off. But all right. And then the intro music or outro music will come, and it'll be better in real life.
Yo, appreciate it, bro. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, fam. For sure.
Have you been at practices yet?
Yeah, bro. So I've been. See, we're still recording here, but no worries. I still.
Yeah, we're out. See you.